Hey everybody who's remote from home, welcome. I think it's about 7, a little after 7, so we'll kick this meeting off. So I'll like to open up this meeting of the advisory committee with everyone who's here. Welcome.
I'm here.
Yep, hey guys. So first item on our agenda for tonight is the final article on the warrant as it's ordered right now, and that's the warrant. Sorry, that's the animal control article, and we have Casey Bailey, animal control officer, remotely with us tonight. And so, Casey, this article I think is the second go around. We had pieces of it included last year that didn't make the cut. So if you would like to just talk to the main points of the article and maybe what's changed, what's different, and we can have that type of conversation.
So this time around, we're looking just to basically we want to update some of the fines so that they're caught up with the state fines. And we also are wanting to change in our bylaws where the public nuisance, under that where it has a dog listed, we would like to change that to an animal. Basically, we're trying to cover where we can do something not just about dogs running loose and being a public nuisance, but also cats. And so that's kind of our thought with changing that. And then so the fines in section B for that, where we would issue fines normally for dogs being a nuisance, that would change that we could also issue for cats to be a nuisance as well. And the fines for that would be updated in accordance with the state laws. And then the section C for that, we are wanting to extend our licensing period from January 1st to the 31st until January 1st through February 28th to give everybody just an extra month to get their dogs licensed on time before we would start charging citations and late fees.
That makes sense.
So that's Article 13. And then Article 14.
Oh, okay. So sorry, I think we have one combined article now. We have Article 11 is what we're looking at, and so whatever you had before as 13 and 14 is now combined into one.
Okay. So with that would be changing so that the selectmen could designate the town manager to conduct dog hearings if they so chose to.
So I don't think we have that.
That on the current article that I have.
Did that get removed? I don't think I got the updated one then. So, because all I have is Articles 13 and Articles 14. I don't think I got sent the updated one.
Okay.
We have Article 11, and there are 3 sections to it. A,
and
B, C. A is the public nuisance, changing the warrant from dog to animal. B is the $50 for the first offense, $100 that one, and C is the
extending out the time for licensing. Okay.
So what happened to the other one?
I think it may just have been moved with the rest then. I don't know. I don't think that I got the updated change of that.
Okay.
So all we have then are just the A, B, and C for Article 11.
Right. So, okay, I think it's fine because you're knowledgeable of the pieces that either are or were as part of the animal control article. So, as it stands right now, then, because something passed last year, right? Chief Grace and I were talking about this. Something passed last year, and that was. Can you remind us what the new?
That was for the zoning bylaws for allowing kennels in town.
Right. Okay.
And that was just updated for definitions and zoning.
Okay, that passed. I remember that. How about the leash law section of the 10-foot leash law?
We took that out this time around.
Yes.
Just to we figured if we would just kind of shorten it and have fewer things at a time, So these are kind of the more important things that we need to work on.
Okay, presumably the leash law piece we'll see that at some point in the future? Or,
That's the plan, yeah.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. And so as far as for dangerous hearings, currently that sits with the Board of Selectmen exclusively, right?
Correct. And that's something too, I think that's been discussed, but if I think that'll be a later thing as
Okay.
well.
All right, so leash law out, 10-foot leash law out, deferment of the decision to the town manager also out. And what we're left is with the pretty straightforward update of fines, broadening the scope of the article or the bylaw to include any animal, not just a dog.
Correct.
And then the timing of licensing is a little more flexible, right? Okay.
Correct.
I get it.
So, Seth, this is Dennis. So I was at the town meeting last year when this whole issue of complaints going to the selectman or the town manager was actually pretty controversial, is my recollection. Is that just going to be dealt with at a later date, or did it get resolved offline? I'm not sure I understand.
I can answer to that because at the selectmen's meeting 2 weeks ago or three weeks ago, the 14th of April, the chairman brought up the fact that he would like that probably put on the agenda for a future warrant.
Okay.
Sounds right, Sharon. And that's echoes what Casey said earlier, I think.
Yeah. But he actually said it at the meeting, so
Right, he did.
part of his editorial. He gave a verbal editorial.
Actually, I know Casey was at one of the meetings, one of the previous two meetings, also giving testimony for that letter.
Right.
From what's your perspective where you are sitting right now with how that thing was not administered, but voted on last year? Is this the current situation, what was anticipated and what wanted to be worked through, or do you see that there still needs to be a reworking of the hierarchy or the chain of command for that type of a situation?
I think it's something that just needs to be discussed. So I think that's a future, something that needs to be considered and discussed further.
So has there been, in your dealing so far, has there been any conflict yet between town manager, the two parties involved, and the BOS, or?
Not to my knowledge, no.
I haven't seen anything so far in the meeting. But then again, you can't have the parties showing up. Everything's being read on paper, and it's just, you don't see that the human dynamic there, what's going on, simply by reading statements. So I didn't know behind the scenes if there's been any other tension because nothing was resolved last year, or if it seems to be a well-working plan so far.
I mean, not to my knowledge that there's been any issues. So,
if I might ask another question here regarding you triggered this question when you mentioned about extending the time for registering pets. Has this whole COVID situation created a situation where pets owners are not able to get their dogs or cats rabies shots because they can't get clinical time?
No, vets are still offering full service.
Okay.
And as long as they've already have been in with a vet, most vets are not taking new clients at this time, but there's still other options. I know Petco is still, they still have a vet, and they still do their rabies clinics by appointment right now. So
Okay.
it
I know
it
they're not doing
shouldn't hinder
grooming. I don't know
that.
if that included. Okay. So there's an avenue for pet owners to all of a sudden get a puppy in June to be able to do something if
Right.
their vet aren't seeing anybody. Okay.
Right.
Any other questions for Casey or comments or anything around this article? We're actually not voting on it, Casey, tonight. It's sort of our policy to have a discussion and vote at a later date. So barring any other questions from the committee, I think we're all set for animal control.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, Casey. All right, so I see DPW Director Chris Gallagher has joined us on the Zoom.
I am here.
We have we're a few minutes ahead of schedule. So why don't we just give it a minute? We'll kick it off in a couple minutes, Chris, if that's all right with you, and we'll,
Sure, that's fine.
all right. So we'll jump back in a minute, thanks. Hi, Rich, how are you? Good, thanks. What time is it? It's about 7:12, we have 7:20, we have the water. While we're taking a minute, anybody on the committee, did everyone on the committee get a chance to take a look at the article assignments, and were there any issues, conflicts?
Fine. Hey, is Dan in the office with you again tonight this week?
Yep,
Oh, I'm
Dan,
here.
Dan's right
Oh,
here.
okay, cool.
I don't know why I can't see
Okay,
you.
just for attendance. Thank you. So we got 10
Yeah.
people here tonight. Okay, good.
They look fine to me, Seth.
There you go. There he is. Looking like Seth Green there is Dr. Evil's son. The desk.
All right, so I think on our agenda, it says we can adjust times as appropriate. I don't think we need to sit and stare at our shoes anymore. Next item on the agenda, we have the water borrowing, or the water department borrowing article. And as I mentioned, we have Chris Gallagher, Director of the DPW, here to discuss that with us. So Chris, why don't you just speak to the, we've already had a little bit of a conversation around this in a couple of formats, but why don't you just speak to the rest of the committee about the need for the investment, and then how we would fund that investment.
Sure.
Thank you.
So this is an article. It's gone through CIP when we had that meeting back in early March. As all capital items do, it went through that process. Because it's more than $1 million, it also goes through as a separate warrant article at town meeting. So, we're at a point where CIP has approved this to move forward, and now it's time for AdCom to take a look at it. So we are looking at 4 major projects that'll be included in this $9.4 million. We have a replacement water tank. So there is a 1938 steel riveted tank on Main Street that has been abandoned. That's no longer in service, and it wasn't something that was going to be able to be renovated and put back into use. So we are looking to replace that tank. Chances are, instead of going back on Main Street, it'll actually go next to the reservoir, the 3 million gallon tank on Hill Street. Better location. We're able to put a smaller tank up there and gain more usable water out of it, and actually at a lower cost than replacing it in kind over on Main Street. So we're looking at $4.5 million for a new water tank that'll be located on Hill Street, and that'll be a replacement for the abandoned tank on Main Street that is now almost 90 years old. We're also looking at a water main project on West Street. West Street has a long dead-end main that ends at the town line up near Conant and Caton neighborhood. The line going from Mill Street up to that neighborhood is a 6-inch AC water main. and we have roughly 2 breaks a year on that main. Typically, they're right in front of the campground. So usually we have one in the winter and one in the dead of summer when they're full of 400 plus people over there. So we're going to replace the water main all the way from South Street all the way to the town line up in front of the neighborhood. So we're looking at about $2.5 million for that project. That project will be originally was going to be worked in conjunction with the dam on West Street. With some delays on the dam project, that's going to get pushed off a year until summer of 21. However, we're going to continue to move forward with permitting, design on the water main, and if we can start that project this fall, we'll start that project this fall. So we're looking at $2.5 million for that. The third item is the Route 1 water tank that currently has Barracuda written on it. That's the one on the stadium side of Route 1 that services the potable water, both pressure and some volume to everything on Route 1. So that tank is now 20 years old, and nothing's been done on that tank since it was installed. So this is in line with what we've been doing with both the Hill Street Reservoir as well as the reuse tank on the opposite side of Route 1. It's going to get a full rehab. And after it's rehabbed, we'll put it under a 15-year maintenance plan with a company. Suez Water is the current company that has the other 2 tanks. We'll put it out as an RFP, find out who the most qualified person is, and have that under a 15-year asset management contract so that we get a full rehab up front, and at the end of 15 years, we get another full rehab. So it's the initial rehab is $2 million, and then it will be probably $35,000 to $40,000 a year after that for the asset management costs, and that'll give us another full rehab at the end of the 15-year contract. The fourth item, it kind of piggybacks on the pumping station road treatment plant, which is under construction and will be finalized and put into use sometime this summer. Hopefully end of July, we'll have that up and running. A lot of site work was done. We improved a lot of the drainage qualities on that property, which help all 4 of the wells that are down there. We also have a need for both storage and additional office space down there. The vehicles right now, for the most part, vehicles and equipment are parked outside, which on a well site is not a good thing. At the moment, they're up behind 70 Elm Street while that property is under construction, but we are looking at doing a fabric top building similar to the salt shed and the storage facility over on Elm Street down there as well. That way all the vehicles can be parked undercover. It will not be a heated space for that. It's just dry, cold storage. It'll have proper drainage. It'll have an oil water separator that'll go into the sewer system, which then carries all that discharge, and anything that leaks, any water that gets into that tent, into that storage facility, will then get pumped up to the bleaching field as part of the sewer system on site. So we're looking at the existing office space and small garage that's there is expandable. When that was built originally, it was built in a way that you could knock down a wall or cut a hole in it and put a doorway and just expand off of it. So we're looking at expanding the office space right now. It's, there's basically one large room that houses 15 technicians, a couple of the supervisors that have computers down there. So that's not at the moment, but it has been their lunch space. It's their meeting space in the mornings and their afternoon meeting space. And we're looking to expand that out just a little bit as the staff is growing. So we're looking at approximately $400,000 for that work as well. So that brings us to the $9.4 million. Again, this went through CIP going on almost 2 months ago now with approval from that committee. And we're now at a point where we're looking for AdCom to hear it and move forward with hopefully approving it and recommending it for town meeting approval.
Great, thanks, Chris. So, as far as the advisory committee considerations, I would suggest a couple of things. The obvious question is, when the CIP committee built out the proposal, these pieces were included. That was early-ish March, so before a lot of the current coronavirus and COVID-19 concerns were, full blast, so to speak. But I think there's, with what we know now, there's a couple of things to consider regarding if this article makes sense now. I mean, I honestly, I'm on the committee for CIP, and I think these are reasonable and requests and the right things to do. And so considerations, I'll cut to the chase. Considerations are first, cost of money. For finance wonky people out there, well, anyone really, it's cheap to borrow money right now. For a couple of reasons, not the least of which is the town's AAA rating. So money is cheap. Two, I think maybe a secondary consideration is the cost of repairing these facilities and this equipment over the next year. And so it's sort of the opportunity cost of not investing in this work now is that there may be other costs to repair, say the water tank, West Street, the Route 1 water tank. So cost of repair that would not necessarily be there with new equipment. So Chris, maybe if you could just speak to that, if that's something that you've thought of, or is that's a valid concern, is the cost of repairing equipment that is not replaced or repaired?
Yeah, so certainly as some of these things get further down the road, the Route 1 tank renovation is one of the big things. Each year we send somebody in there to do an inspection on it. The report comes back and it has changed. There's more that needs to be done. A couple of years ago, the report was that we would be able to recoat the outside of the tank, do some prep work and recoat it and put another layer of paint on there. As time went on, we looked at it in more detail, and we're now at a point where it needs a full sandblast, strip down on the outside as well as the inside, which involves putting a tent up over the structure and completely stripping it down and starting new on that exterior coating. The interior, we're seeing deterioration on the steel, the structure itself.
Mm-hmm.
It is starting to rot in places that we don't want it to rot.
Right.
So that the interior coating has worn off completely on some of the steel and some of the locations, and obviously that's going to continue to get worse until we strip it, get a new coat of paint on it, and get it back to where it should be, and we're able to stop that deterioration. So the longer we wait on the Route 1 tank, the more it's going to cost us to do that renovation.
Got it.
Construction-wise, we're at a point where you have places like the city of Boston that's completely shut down projects. So you have contractors that were planning work in Boston through this spring, through summer, into the fall, that they don't know when they're going to get back to work. So if we're able to do things like the West Street water main project, we're going to have some of these contractors that are thirsty and going to put a better price on that project and that work than if they were in the middle of a project in Boston and they were waiting on, that to be completed as the next project or 2 projects from now. So that's something that we're looking to capitalize on, as well as that construction, that lack of construction out in the field, and hopefully we're going to get a better price not only on the water main but the new water tank up on Hill Street as well.
Yeah, that's my main thrust there. One, I was going to ask you, do you happen to know of other towns that might be looking for that same kind of work now that you might be in competition with, or it might be an open field in which you've got a lot of contractors that don't have the work, and you might actually be able to have more competitive bidding for it, and that opportunity cost could be offset. We're taking a bite by paying the money now, but if you can save another 10, 15% simply because there isn't any other work out there, then it balances itself off. The waiting and delay might be to the point then where everybody else is back online again, and now you got a heavier competition to get the labor.
Yeah, so that's definitely a concern, or a benefit, is that I haven't heard many other towns that are pushing. There are some that are doing some paving work, they're doing some road construction and capitalizing on that now. But as far as large construction projects, I think there's going to be a lot of thirsty contractors out there.
Right. I was going to. That kind of extends also to the other project that the extending the main down from South Street out to end of town past West Street. Is that outside contract work as well as town DPW work, or is that pretty much all in town?
No, so that'll be a contractor doing that work. It's roughly 1.5 miles of water main. So that's all. It'll be all brand new construction. What we'll do is we'll leave the existing water main in place, dig up, put a brand new piece of pipe in the ground from one end to the other, and then once that is live, it's been pressure tested, it's full of clean chlorinated water, treated water, then we'll do all the service connections, tie overs at that point in time. That'll all be an outside contractor.
I was thinking along the same
you might
lines.
have to go back to get this article modified. It specifies putting the pipe in from South Street to Mill Street, not to the town line. That's what the wording is today.
On West Street from South to Mill.
So that's an easy change to make.
Sure. Right.
Yeah. So going by the campground. Right.
Yeah.
If you're going past the campground to the town line, the article precludes that.
Right.
So that's an easy change to make now.
Yep. Nope. That's a good catch. I appreciate that, Jack.
Yep.
I have a second question. When you tear down the Main Street tank and you're putting another one on Hill Street,
Yep.
What's the security implications or the system implications of putting your water tanks in the same place, or is there any questions?
We haven't really had any security issues on our tank sites. They're visited on a daily basis. We have our technicians on a daily basis. They go and visit those facilities. They take some meter readings at those facilities. So both the Hill Street tank, the Barracuda tank, or the Route 1 tank, we're on those facilities on a daily basis.
The Main Street tank isn't used now anyway. So.
Correct. It's not used, and it's actually not connected to the system. It's actually been drained. It's empty. It's been disconnected from the system. So that one, it's just an empty tank, not connected to anything. So we've looked at a couple different options. We looked at putting it back on Main Street, and the cost as well as the benefit of putting it back on Hill Street just outweighed replacing it in kind where it was.
Is removal of the Main Street tank included in this article?
It is not. I've talked to a few different contractors on that, and the expectation is when I put the RFP out, or the bid out, is that I'll be able to get somebody to take that down for the cost of the steel, and it's basically a $0 item to remove that tank, just based on the cost of steel. And when we put that out to bid for removal.
Thanks, Chris.
So just one thing, Seth, I didn't mention it earlier, but so when we looked at these projects going through CIP and how they fit into the water department budget, we did look at, do they fit in the rate structure? And we initially had the Route 1 tank renovation as a separate CIP article, that would then get put into the operating budget, similar to the Hill Street and the reuse tank, where the cost of doing that and the way that would have worked with the contractor, that was not going to fit into the budget. Just based on the first 5 years, it's a much larger payment. That was gonna push the budget to a point where we didn't want to raise the rate as much as it was going to cost us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to put it into this bond, paid off as a 20-year item, it fits within the rate increase that the Water and Sewer Commissioners have voted on for next fiscal year. We've budgeted our revenue conservatively on that front. I know Bill and George have presented that, they're showing I think they put out a 10% decrease on the revenue, which is about where we were budgeting our revenue expectation for FY21. So these items, the way they fit in the bond, meet all the requirements of being a bond item. There's an expectation that all these will outlast the 20-year payment cycle. And it fits within that rate increase, the 6% rate increase that the Water and Sewer Commissioners have voted on.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Chris, quick question. Do you have any photos of the Barracuda tank? Or anything that you can show, that it doesn't look like it's safe or up to par or something like that?
Yeah, so we get a full report every time we send an inspector up there. We have a full report with all the photos. Everything's detailed. They not only put somebody on the outside, but they put somebody on the inside, and they look at it in detail. And we do get a significant report. And I have ones, from a couple of years ago, and can see the extra deterioration that they're calling out from this past year when they were up there most recently.
Okay,
Want to take a
awesome.
look at that, Dan?
I would love to take a look at that.
What do you say, Chris? Shoot me over a copy?
I'm
Great.
happy to do so.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks, Dan. So we also have George Sami, our finance director, here. And George, if you would speak to the cost of money piece of it. I know that we've chatted about that a little bit before.
Well, once again, I don't think, I can't tell you exactly what the number is going to be. I
Right.
can say that when we just did the bonding, that only closed about a month ago, just before everything hit the fan here.
Mm-hmm.
The story was from our council that we had hit the lowest rate since, I think, 1886 is what was given. Now, obviously, there was a reaction from the Fed and everything to try to offset the mess that we've got going here, and they reduced rates and everything down. How long that will last, I don't know, but right now it's still pretty low. Just for the sake of argument, it doesn't really apply to this, but I think we were probably the lowest town in the general vicinity. We just hit it exactly right.
For the last day.
For the last one.
Yeah.
So it just happened, and I think we were right in the right place at the right time, and it happened. But I think you're still going to experience record lows right now, and I hate to use the word, because I've heard it before, free money, because it sounds very cavalier and frivolous, but the point is you're getting to a point where the amount of the interest that you're paying is almost negligible. So when you say it's free money, you're basically borrowing money with very little payback on it. So it's just, you're almost
That's the inflation
borrowing the principal and paying that back.
Right, no, that's good
Or less than the
clarification.
inflation rate, so you're paying with real dollars.
Right, exactly. So
Right, okay, so that's, I think, it's one, work that needs to be done that we'd rather not pay repair costs on, and two, the cost of money is low. Money is cheap right now, and that's probably the primary
right.
impetus for having this article now, when a lot of people might think, why would you want $10 million more of debt in this type of environment, and those are the two primary reasons. Yep, thank you, George. Before you, any other questions for George before he, I mean, he'll be here, but just while he's at the mic.
I'll go with Chris, if we can go back to Chris.
Okay, George, I guess we're all set.
Okay.
Thank you. Sure, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, Chris, when you had mentioned, was it the number 2, the West Street again, and talking about, because I remember it came up last week about the dam project. Is there a potential increase in costs of doing the 2 items separately as opposed to at the same time? Or is there a loss? I mean, or would it cost us more to separate the 2, or would it cost us more to wait and do it all at once in the following year when the state gets back to doing its dam stuff?
I think I would say I can't tell you for sure, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably negligible. Okay. I think, if we were able to do them all in one, there's a chance there's some savings. We're going to pay one contractor to mobilize and demobilize. That's the biggest thing.
Right.
If the case is that we have one contractor doing the water main starting this fall, another contractor doing the dam work next summer of 21, we're getting that water main work done this year versus 18 months from now. So I think that increase in construction cost is probably going to offset any mobilization costs from 2 contractors.
Do you see it being a major project to retrofit that stretch where it coincides with the dam, or is it pretty much just a minor workaround to do?
No, it's about 300 feet of water main. We're looking at still weighing the options of putting it under the dam versus putting it over it and insulating it. So there's still we're still up in the air on that piece of it, but the rest of the water main has been designed. It's on a plan. We're ready to go out to bid, sometime in the next month or so with that work. Assuming, I should say in the month, after July 1st, assuming this moves forward.
So the last part of that is, was this bonding issue, was this including money for the dam project, or was that taken out when you realized it wasn't going to get done at the same time?
No,
the state was pulling out.
Yeah, so we had budgeted some money for the water main piece under the dam. That had been budgeted previously, so that if that project went forward this summer, regardless of whether this 2.5 million was included, we would be able to do that piece around the dam. Because once that dam gets renovated, the state's not going to look at us and accept us trying to do any work underneath that thing. So we made sure that work was already budgeted.
Okay. So it's pretty much this warrant is the dam portion really doesn't play a huge role in this allocation here through the CIP. It's already been accounted for somewhere else. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know if we'd have to adjust this to take that piece out if it wasn't going to get done until the state also was going to compensate for their part. But
right.
They've already accommodated for it. So, okay. Right. Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Any other questions for Chris or any other anything else around the water department borrowing article?
Just one question, Chris. The dam being replaced, if it's being replaced because it's a hazard, do you expect that? How do you justify a delay?
So basically what happens is we've been doing an inspection every 6 months on that dam. The state came out originally in 2008 with a letter to the town saying this is something that needs to be addressed. That has been pushed off. The Conservation Department originally in 2008 and then in 2009 did get some funding to do studies, potentially some design work to repair that and bring that up to a good standard dam. So another 12 months of a delay, we're going to do another 2 inspections on that dam, make sure that we meet the Office of Dam Safety requirements. And we've looked at what the downstream, part of that analysis is what the downstream impacts are. And to be honest, most of that goes through the woods, through the backside of Normandy Farms. And, there's very little impact to residential properties if that dam were to let go. So we're keeping an eye on it. We do our every 6 months inspection, and we're making sure that we're meeting the Office of Dam Safety requirements to keep that in order with them.
That work for you, Jack?
Yeah, I was on mute, but yes, that's fine. I felt that given the deferral of the work, since the work was justified based on safety, one has to ask the question.
Yeah, fair question.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's not the only dam we have that is going to need work. We have a few others that are kind of split between town-owned and privately owned, so we're working through some of that legalese to figure out who's responsible for what moving forward. But there'll be more of these dams coming forward in the future, and hopefully we can do similar thing and get grant funding like we did for the West Street project.
Yeah, I'm not pushing that it be done.
Yeah.
Now, but I'm just saying that we shouldn't just cavalierly say, tomorrow.
Right. Sure.
Fair point. All right.
Chris, did you look at, these questions might come up at the town meeting, and I think the low cost of borrowing, these are things that have to be done. And with a low cost of borrowing, it doesn't make any sense to delay it, but to do it now, actually, because you're going to have to do it at some point in the future, and it's going to be more expensive in the future. Did you actually look at what the 20-year cost of this borrowing would be year by year versus just for 1 year, what the maintenance costs would be of not doing this work?
So is that in regards to the West Street Dam?
Yes. No. I think the work in general that's in this article.
Okay. So, we have received a projection on the Route 1 tank renovation if that were to get pushed off, any longer. We were initially trying to get that work done within the existing budget this spring, and we just weren't able to get there. We have issues with the new water tank is a necessity. So right now, when that Main Street water tank came offline, the only tank on the low pressure system is that 3 million gallon tank on Hill Street. If we have any issues with that tank, then there are a lot of places in town that are going to have no water pressure. So that's more of a need. It's a necessity to do that work. It's not so much that we can put it off for cost savings, or it's not a maintenance item. It's a piece of new infrastructure that really is required. And we have our maintenance contract, and they've actually been looking to drain that tank to do a full inspection and a recoating of the interior. And we haven't been able to do that or allow them to do that because we can't go without the pressure and the volume from that tank. The West Street water main is, again, it's a project that there are pressure issues up in that Caton Conant neighborhood where they have a 6-inch water main feeding that neighborhood. There's an 8-inch water main in that neighborhood. We're feeding it with a 6-inch that, like I said, twice a year we're having breaks on. Anytime a hydrant gets open in that neighborhood, and we know this from flushing, we drain that system. There isn't enough flow. So along with replacing a water main that's now 75, 80 years old, we're also increasing the size of that main so that they have improved fire flow up in that neighborhood and won't have the pressure issues that they're seeing now. These aren't so much, the Route 1 tank is a maintenance issue. The other three are really necessitated by the, not only in that area, but generally in the system in town.
Chris,
Yes.
where's the location of the Main Street red water tank?
So if you go, as you're heading towards Route 1,
It's a Stop and Shop, right?
it's
Behind.
past Stop and Shop up the hill. As you crest that hill before coming down to Lakeview, it's on the right side there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thanks very much, Chris. Appreciate your time.
All right, Seth, thank you.
All right. So we're not too far off the schedule here. So our next item is public safety discussion and voting. You'll recall that way back in February 26th, per my notes here, we had conversations around the various departments within public safety. And for the benefit of everyone on the committee, George is still here, as is Chief Mike Grace and Deputy Chief Rich Noonan from the police department, and Chief Mike Kelleher from fire is here as well. So they're in the room here if there's any questions or we want to have include them in the discussion. So, but at this point, why don't we turn over to? So you know what? Actually, let me make a opening statement here, and then I'll open it up to the floor. I probably have some questions around some of the costs in the public safety, police, and fire. At this point in time, I think public safety and the importance of it, it's always super important, and it's even more at a premium now in the times we're living through. So I think we keep that in mind. We still have our process and we're practicing due diligence, but I think we all have that in the back of our minds that public safety is super critical at this time and for the foreseeable future. So, let's keep that in mind as we work through. So if we turn to Department 210, and that's police. While you're flipping to that, I'll just reference the budget amount, which when brought to us in February was $5.122 million. And that is the number that's before us today. So there's been no change from original budget proposal to now, okay? So the 5.122 includes everything that we talked about before. I think, so actually, along the lines of the compensation piece, we've had discussions, Chief Grace and Bill Keegan, our town manager, and others, George Samia, we've had discussions around the optimal mix of overtime versus straight time. And so we had some back and forth. I think that is still something that's an open issue, and I think that's something that will be discussed and revisited in future sessions. But I think it's something that is the right answer, or the right mix of overtime and straight time is a knowable thing. I don't know that we have the resources right now to know that answer. So for example, when I would ask Chief Grace, I'd say, what would it look like if we took out one full-time equivalent of overtime and throw in another regular time head or a set of hours, factoring in benefits, reduced overtime rates, increased supplies and training? And I think that's an answer that we'd have a hard time getting to right now, right? Chief, you have thoughts, or why don't you come up if you... Well, Rich, you're welcome to as well.
Thanks, Seth.
Sure.
Yeah, so this has been our dialogue with Larry as well.
Yep.
So I think when we start talking about a body, we start talking about hours. So if we take a full-time employee, who works Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week. He works, or she is on the books for 2,080 hours.
Yeah.
My police officers who work Monday through Friday do not get replaced on overtime. So they don't fall into that equation. So my detectives, they don't, if they take a day off, we don't backfill that. Or my school resource officer, we don't backfill that. The overtime is essentially for, patrol overtime is for shift work. So with that, we then have to take a patrol officer or a patrol sergeant. They work a 4 and 2. Being on a 4 and 2 schedule, you work 17 days less a year on that rotating schedule, which is about 136 hours deducted from that 2080. And this is, I'm gonna go quick math and I'll try to keep everybody in tuned. The police department, and let me just tell you, at this moment, is the offices, I can't be any more proud than what we've been going through as a community. We've had 2 officers who have contracted COVID-19. They were superstars. They took care of themselves. We did everything by the book. The rest of the officers pitched in. We're running on full cylinders. I think I've had 3 sick days in 2 months total in the department. Everybody's showing up. No one's working from home. It's just been amazing in their commitment to the community. But let me just now backtrack. So that deducts 136 hours from that one employee. Historically, they average 40 hours a year sick time. That's it. So the police officers only get, essentially, they take 5 sick days a year, which would be 40 hours additionally that you would not show up. Your vacation time, your training time, your personal time, your contractual time off is about 320 hours. Could vary slightly depending how many years on the job. So that brings us to 496 hours now.
360?
320.
320.
Yep.
Is that like 8 weeks? Or am I doing that math wrong?
Well, 10 years on the job, you get 28 vacation days. And because we work holidays, you get 11, you have to work the holidays, you get another 11 days.
So that
as
is
well.
8 weeks. I was like,
Yep.
that's a,
And then you get 1 personal day.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So that brings the tangible number to 1,584 hours. So that's when that officer is showing up and could affect the overtime. Now, that officer cannot work every single day as overtime, covering overtime.
Yeah.
But if they did, and I pay them their overtime rate, that'll come out to $95,000 and $95,040. That's how much we'd save. If every shift they worked, they covered in overtime. The problem is we actually have to hire them and give them their salary and pay their benefits. So the one solution, as we talked about, I think in general is something that has to be looked at more than just putting a finger on one hole. Essentially, maybe that's the wrong term, but it's more like overall staffing and what the real numbers should be collectively. So, and the other thing is, I think, number one, as you mentioned, what we're going through right now, what we're in for, no one can predict. We have taken so many steps to how are we going to run potentially with 3 offices? How are we going to reach out and have mutual aid with our partners in Norfolk County and also the state police if we end up with high levels of exposures? So all those people out, all that time, I don't even know what I could predict. Hopefully, fingers crossed that we manage it, we isolate it, but not to think that we're not going to potentially have exposures or would be false. So I just, and the other underlining issue is, when gauging where you're at, you kind of want to build the house off a solid foundation and assess it. So I have 3 officers who started the academy right at the end of the year. You can only imagine what the police academy is right now. It's been on hold. They paused it. They're now doing remote classes for some of it. The gun ranges aren't open. The defensive tactics can't happen. We can't do defensive driving. So my window of that office is coming on July 1st. I can tell you it's not happening. We're probably looking at a 2-month window. We're going to have to reassess our FTO program because now we can't put 2 officers in a car. I also have an officer who's still out injured from a motorcycle accident. I have one officer since we last met has filed for retirement. Sadly, the retirement process through Norfolk County could take 9 months. And then I have another officer who's got a legitimate illness, nothing work-related, who is, we got a monitor who's not working right now and using his time. So to build off and to try to gauge it is very difficult today, considering that 25% of my patrol force isn't there. A year or 6 months, 9 months from now, when we're running on 4 cylinders, I think we'll have a better indication of where we're at. So I just want to, so you did ask for a homework assignment, so I wanted to say it. I did it, so.
Yeah, you did, and your knowledge of all the moving pieces there is impressive. So if I was to put that in a nutshell, it's challenging for me. I'm a little slow, but it sounds like there may be some savings at some point down the future by tweaking the mix of hours, but tactically or operationally right now, would be taxing on the system, and now's not the time.
I will 100% agree.
Okay.
The other thing is in January, the officers historically get their vacation dump from the previous year. Well, they all got their vacation time, and no one's taken any. So I'm 6 months, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So no one has allocated their benefits. And we're also, as a town, moving to a July 1st accrual date. So in July 1st, they're going to get a 6-month dump from the previous 6 months. So they're going to have a year and a half, essentially, of benefits that they've earned. And now we're going to try to squeeze that into 1 fiscal year.
Yeah,
I haven't done the math on that one yet.
that's the
So,
challenge, right?
yeah, so I know we already had 2 hours on the budget, but I'll just do it backwards. That the guidelines that were set forth by the town manager, they were pretty strict. And my proposal is below that at 2.67% increase overall. It was a 3.5 that the departments overall were allowed. I have no CIP requests, and I have no new positions. So I just ask for your support on this.
Appreciate it, Chief. Can I ask?
Hey, Seth.
Hey, Chief.
Yep, guys,
Hey, Seth,
one second. I just had
Paul, I got a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Chief Grace, last time you visited, you also talked about how hard it was to get not just training for incoming officers, but for the officers who are already on duty.
So when you say difficult,
Essentially, no time to get them out to do the training. Is that? Go ahead.
well, yeah, essentially based on the staffing ratios, the training budget was $40,000. And I believe, I can't remember who quoted, but I was dead on arrival before I even started with $40,000 trying to train. And I had broke down every single hour that we're mandated by state, and and on top of that, I also, when I do my calculations, I don't even do hour for hour. I take into account that I hope that I can cover, like 25% of it for nothing, that it's just going to work out with staffing ratio. So I don't build it high. I start conservative. I exclude one office out of every single shift. I just take them out of that rotation because I'm going to absorb that without using that. So yeah, when you're talking 80 hours of training per police officer and you're backfilling sergeants 1 for 1 because I need a supervisor on the shift, and based on the staffing ratios, 24 of the police officers are all overtime backfills. Not because I don't want to, is because currently the staffing ratio on all the shifts is at a minimum, which is 4, plus a supervisor.
Fair. Thanks, Paul. Brian, you had a question or a comment?
Chief, remember when you sent me the analysis of the overtime amounts? That was an amazing analysis, but it did show a shortfall of 23,000 on what you needed for your full overtime spend. Are you still at that number? Is that still?
Yeah, I still, yeah. It is going to be a shortfall, but I can work with that. That's,
Okay.
you know, if we get some people back online and I should be able to absorb that. And believe it or not, this year is unique as we've started to, the state has pushed off some of our mandatory training. They've pushed it off. But now some of it we may be able to do remotely. So many people are becoming very creative. So if it is something that the officers can do on duty, and they've created that platform, then the officers can do it on duty, and I don't have to backfill the shift. They can carve that out when they're working.
Yep.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay.
Tom,
Thank you.
You had a question or comment?
Oh, you're sorry, talking to me? No, he actually just mentioned the question I was going to ask was whether or not there's been any mandate training or costs or expenses or anything like that have come from the state or the feds that are being suspended for this year, and whether those costs were already factored into the budget.
Can you repeat that? I'm not sure if it was a question or...
No, he asked if I had a question. I was about to ask the same question, and then you answered Brian's question by saying that some mandated training have been suspended for this year, and so.
Okay, yeah, well, some of it has been, maybe not suspended was the wrong term, it's been postponed because they were waiting for the governor to see how he's going to decide in the next 2 weeks and the opening up process, so some of it is still limbo.
Has there been any hint or discussion that there may be added new protocols you will have to start considering in the wake of a pandemic response like this?
We've already started that. We started that probably 3 months ago, when the first time you see something on the news, like partnering with Chief Kelleher and his team, we're already thinking ahead. Everything from how we respond to calls, how we man our calls, how we code our calls. And I will say that we are tracking every single expense that we have, every single hour that we spend, and we're putting it into a database, so hopefully we can get reimbursed potentially through MEMA or FEMA, which will all go back directly to the town. It won't go back to the police department, it goes back to the general fund. So, and George has done a great job making sure that all the departments are on board with that and making sure we capture every penny we can.
Great.
Oh, fantastic.
To that end, so we talked about how this is kind of a weird year already, and budget-wise it doesn't make sense to lay a foundation. Does that mean we'll see a little bit of a jump next year with you guys making plans to pull in another officer or figure out how you want to run your shifts, or maybe ask for some CIP stuff?
Yeah, I'll tell you, like...
I'm not asking you to get specific. But
no, I think after watching the budget process the last couple of years, my guidelines coming in, number one is a new chief, and after watching what AdCom did ask from the department heads, I can tell you, I made the joke, I wasn't going to come in and ask for bodies, okay? Wasn't happening.
Yep.
And the other thing right now is I can't get one. I couldn't get a lateral transfer because no department would sign off.
Yeah.
They wouldn't give up that resource because they can't replace it.
Right.
The state has not even sure how they're going to run a police academy in the fall. They can't even get through the ones they have now. So it's going to be a challenge. And say, Seth, you were so kind and you gave me 5 police officers today. I couldn't hire them in fiscal year 21.
Yeah, okay.
I'd be looking like fiscal year 22 before they're really an asset. So... but we're always trying to think, like, how do we tweak, how do we improve our delivery, our services at the most efficient way?
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to see if, because there's a little bit of an impact one way this year, if it was going to go the other way next year. Thinking ahead.
Which way? What kind of impact?
Like budget. Like, so we have some issues this year with your staffing. There'll be like a little more maybe overtime ask, but then next year, you don't know how it's going to shake out, but I was wondering if you had any indication.
I would say this year, because the last 3 months and potentially the next month or two, I mean, there could be salary items that just come back to the town that I don't use. And I will say, overtime items in the budget all have a designated role. They're not spent because we want to spend them. Court overtime, investigation overtime, training overtime, it's used specifically. So if there's, or salary items, if it doesn't get used, it goes back to the town. It doesn't just get spent,
Can I ask a quick question, just because I
Sure.
don't know the answer to? What about the school resource officer? Is he still doing outreach stuff right now, or?
He's, some departments, and I did survey this through Mass Chiefs, what they were using them for. Many departments were very, very concerned about staffing and how do you protect the infrastructure of your first responders to make sure at the end of the day you have available staff.
Yeah.
So my resource officers have all been put into patrol
Okay.
on the 8 to 4 shift. We're in constant contact with the school department, especially with graduation coming up and
Yeah,
what we
absolutely.
can do. But they've been utilized that way as well to offset costs that may be occurring because of other things.
Cool.
So,
One thing that has been on my mind is, and I'm glad George is here, for the next cycle, we're going through a budget process. If there was a more efficient process for you, I feel like you've got a spreadsheet that you're trying to finagle when somebody from the advisory committee says, what happens if you take out this resource and put in this resource? I don't know if there's any kind of standardized planning tool that you're able to use and drop in one head of this type, pull out another. It feels like that doesn't exist. And it feels like it's more taxing than it should be for you
to build a
answer
data,
those types,
like this budget was, I had to take a lot of the line items.
Yeah.
And I had to fix them all in regards to, there were some contract settlements that were just dropped in there. They didn't have a home yet.
Yeah.
So I created the groundwork of what every single officer costs per hour, per year, every overtime rate. So I have that database, Excel, I can add it up, I can do it, but every single number changes. Unfortunately, because a lot of the contracts is based on percentage, not dollar amounts. So everybody's salary is slightly different based on their time on the job, their shift differential, their education, their step raise. So I have about 10 variables.
Right.
So,
And it's fair to say that there's no planning tool for you. You're manipulating spreadsheets, changing rates, dollars, heads. Is that fair?
yeah, but I can run a forecast, the year to date, the munis reports. We internally, every single week when payroll's done, I get an allocation of every single hour that got spent, how much I spent and what overtime, where did it go? Did it go to sick? Our online scheduling now, we've created an online schedule that captures every single hour spent, every single officer, where they're using it, what they're using it in training, when it occurred, who approved it, and that exports directly to munis. So we've cut hours and hours off of payroll. So I can pull that up. But in projecting the cost, I know the time off. We take into account who's at a different step raise or when at an anniversary date where they may get another week's vacation. So we project that, we build that in, and that's what I did with the budget on all of the salary line items.
So you feel like you do have the resources when we're in the planning process to identify, like the optimal mix of hours and those types of things. You feel that you have the tools you need?
Yeah, so my staff.
In an efficient way, yeah.
Yeah, when you become very comfortable with it and you know it and you see it every day and you sign the payroll and you know where the hours go.
Yep.
Myself and the deputy, we know where it's going, and my 2 administrative staff, they're fantastic. They have every single invoice that we ever pay, who it goes to, what group, what vendor, so we can pull it up and we can see. A couple little tweaks on some of the accounts have to occur. The COVID-19, some of the expenses, obviously out-of-state conferences aren't happening by any means, so we've had a shift into buying PPE at, unfortunately, very expensive rates, getting the cruisers cleaned, getting the building cleaned. So we've had a shift in our expenses that I didn't have a line item for, so some of those are gonna go into the ground, but it's all gonna level off this year.
Okay. All right, folks. Gentlemen, before I let you go, I know I speak for the whole committee when I say thank you for the work that you and your teams do for the town. Keep us safe. Very much appreciated. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Seth.
All right.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
You sure you don't want me to stay? There could be
No,
a
you're
question,
welcome
you
to
know?
stay. You can stay right where you
Well,
are
I'm
if you
gonna
like.
stay.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're just moving over to having any discussions. So I'll open up the floor. So specifically Department 210. I'm opening up the floor. Any questions on items, line items, or anything that people have questions or comments on? Because I'm planning to vote this tonight.
I'm good, Seth.
Thank you, Larry.
Yeah, I think with our meetings with him, we've been very, very thorough.
Agreed.
In that case, I move to vote on Department 210, Police Department, in the amount of $5,122,830.
And 2 cents.
And 2 cents. Right?
Thank you, Mr. Spot.
Second.
I think Dennis and Larry's both seconded, Tom, so I think either way.
Either way.
I'll flip a coin here. Dennis.
Dennis.
Dennis, all right.
Dennis.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 in favor, which means 0 opposed and 0 abstain.
Okay, got it.
Thank you. All right. Moving on. Fire Department, Department 220. And as I mentioned, Chief Kelleher is here. If there's questions or issues, so let's start bottom line first, right? Bear with me for one moment. All right. So when we originally reviewed the fire department proposal back in late February, the number was $4,232,536. The current proposal in front of us is $4,171,233. So that $4,171,000 is a 3.74% increase over the current year budget. The change there is about $60,000, and that is the reduction in staff, one staff member. What was the exact title of that staff member?
Firefighter, paramedic.
Paramedic, right, firefighter, paramedic. Is everyone on board with what the change is there and understand that?
Right.
All right. So I'm just looking over my notes and my thoughts here, so I'll open up the floor to anyone who has questions. If you would like, Chief Kelleher is available. If you have a question for him, Chief, you're welcome to come right up here and grab a mic if you're interested. So as
Hey, Chief.
Yep. Go ahead.
Hey, Seth. I just wanted to ask the chief about impacts from COVID, and how that's impacted, the services that you have to provide and any budgetary, issues that might come up due to that.
Yeah, it's been an interesting 2020, to say the least.
Right.
Our processes in the pre-hospital environment have changed significantly with the way we deal with patients. Obviously, we've dealt with dozens and dozens of some of the sickest COVID patients we have in town. Fortunately, we have not had anybody come come down with COVID. So that's been a huge thing. I think that definitely reinforces all the infection control procedures that we implemented early on. But calls obviously take longer. We're utilizing more disposable medical equipment such as masks and gowns and everything as we take care of these patients. We go through a full decon process to clean everybody before they come back to the station. We have foggers that we are using to disinfect and decontaminate the ambulances after these calls to make sure that they're clean and ready to go for the next person. I will say that our calls for service for some of the more minor things have certainly decreased, but now when people call the ambulance, it's definitely an emergency, and people are sick when they call 911 now. So there's some of the other, just by nature of daily life, our traffic accidents have decreased significantly out on Route 95. But oddly, we've had a spike in car fires. I can't explain it. Maybe people are going faster. I don't know, but it's definitely it's a paradigm shift. It's just different. Some of the calls are different. We've had an uptick in fires, outside fires. We've been every couple of days we're going to one of our surrounding communities for a building fire or a house fire. Fortunately, we haven't had anything significant here in Foxborough. We've had a bunch of little stuff, but like I said, there was a stretch we were going to a car fire almost every other day on 95 or 495. So it's a different time. It's kind of eerie, but I have to say, like Chief Grace had mentioned, the morale's high. Everybody's engaged. Everybody's showing up to work. I haven't seen people showing up to work so early with a smile on their face in years. and after the shift, everybody kind of hangs around. They have coffee. There's not that rush to get out of there because there's nowhere to go. So, but no, the staff has been really good, really engaged. Like I said, I think the practices that we employed early on have shown the fruits of our labor with not having anybody infected. So it's really that's a positive thing. So I shouldn't even be talking about it because I'm going to jinx this. But no, I think budgetary-wise, I think we'll come in on budget. I think we're going to be good. Early on, we were purchasing some of the necessary equipment. Like we really never had the need for a industrial fogger before to spray disinfectant. Usually, our usual methods of disinfecting the ambulance were always effective. But now, we obviously wanted to ramp it up, and things come to market when this stuff happens. So we're able to take advantage of some of it. And now a lot of our personal protective equipment is being subsidized through the state and through MEMA, through the Department of Public Health. So we're trying to take advantage as much as we possibly can with that. So, and we also work in concert with the health department as well, because the public health nurse, as of July 1st, works in the fire department, which was a heck of a year to take that over. But I think that program has proven, without a doubt, proven itself. It's really incredible the way that we are able to acquire and share information real time with our providers in the field because we have access to the state's infectious disease database. So that was probably the best and biggest enhancement as far as responder safety in the last year, that we were able to have access to that information and share it real time and have the actual public health nurse work in our building being able to respond with us, and advise real time and have the contacts at the state level and with epidemiologists. I mean, we've been on the phone with epidemiologists, discussing different cases and working through different processes, and it's really interesting, and it really it's a great partnership and marriage as far as tangible skills, bringing those together. So I think a lot of towns are really jealous and really going to probably look at something like this in the future because it just makes so much sense.
Thanks, Chief. Could you just take a second and refresh us on so there's the assistant chief who it's not an incremental add. It's an incremental. It's on a different line item in the budget.
Yep.
So certain items, there's another line item that's coming down, right?
Yes.
This one. So
So if you looked at the top, there was always like Chief Grace had described. There was a line that was just a generic line.
Yeah, salaries and wages.
Year over year, when things changed or there was, there were raises given on collective bargaining agreements and things like that. Sometimes that drags on for a year or two before that contract shakes out. Mm-hmm. That's where that money goes, and it just kind of built year over year. So at one point, I think we had $300,000 in that line, and none of those other line items had increased. The increase was just seen at the top.
Right.
Rather than dispersing, it was a practice. Rather than dispersing it to the areas that, to make the budget, they just kind of like drop it in a lump. And I don't mean the chiefs, I mean, that was the way it
Right.
was.
Yeah.
It was done, and then, you know, but these guys, which is why we switched back to having the department, especially the large ones, because they have an understanding of, really, this is where I need it. I need it in overtime, I need it in, here. So they've kind of got the budget to a place where, at least there's some logic to it, not just some big lump of money sitting up in the.
Right.
Yeah, correct. It was we were lucky because as soon as George and Marie came on, that was one of the first projects we took on, is straightening out the budget and actually creating and dispersing the money across the lines. So.
Yep. So I'm reacting now to the total compensation, which is $3.8 million. And it ironically maybe is exactly at that 4% increase that we hear so much about in past years and past meetings. Is it 2%? Is it 4%? Here we are at 4, and frankly, I think a lot of that conversation belongs at probably at a Board of Selectmen meeting, but 4% is the average increase, it looks like, across the staff, because there's no ad, so it implies everyone's getting 4%, so.
When you take that into account, I think one of the things that Bill Keegan has been adamant about is that you're getting a COLA for X, and then if somebody's sitting at the top of the grid, that's it. You're where you get it. You're getting your 2. If you had a step, then there's a space between the step that you're getting. But I think that was like one of the first things we had, is it's sort of like the top step should be the place that you're actually looking to go, and you're traversing up from the bottom.
In the collective bargaining agreement, there's a 1, 3, 5, 10, and 15-year steps. So most of our staff is in that, 1 to 10-year range, probably.
Right.
I'd say 50%. So
yep. So that 4% on comp is the primary driver of the 3.74 overall increase from 20 to 21. So I'm just pointing that out for the benefit of the members. Comments, questions on fire department 220?
Nope.
No? Okay, well, in that case, I wanted to offer you thanks on behalf of the committee and everyone that I talked to in town for the great responses, keeping us safe. Very much appreciated, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to come in too, as you guys are voting on it. I appreciate the invitation to be here and answer any questions. This has been a nice process to go through this year.
Transparency and open dialogue, I think.
Yeah, thank you everybody for your time too. I appreciate the volunteer. I know it can be tough.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Good.
All right, other questions and comments on fire, or now's the time? Anyone interested in making a motion?
I'll make the motion to accept.
In the amount of $4,171,233
And 8 cents.
and 8 cents.
Any sense, Larry?
6 cents.
Thank you.
I second the motion. And I would ask all those in favor to accept as is, to raise your hand high and keep them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, that is 10 in favor, which is 0 opposed and 0 abstain. Thanks, everybody.
Is Chief actually still there?
Yes.
I was just going to ask, either both can answer or whoever's there wants to. Have you seen how do I voice this? Central Dispatch, has this been proving to be a godsend in this situation here, or has it been working through a lot of kinks because of the overwhelming pandemic situation?
No, we have to, actually, I have to give credit where credit's due. Early in, probably late January, Rob Verdone from SEMREC had a meeting with us to discuss the implications of this emerging infectious disease and how we're going to screen it through 911. He was kind of at the tip of the spear on 911 calls coming in and how we're going to triage it. And we were one of the first probably around to develop and implement a screening tool for the infectious disease known as COVID now. So it's been phenomenal, and they do a really good job. We share information real time, police, fire. We're aware of what the calls are. It's been pretty much seamless. Our people are well protected. I have high confidence that we're notified of the calls as they're coming in, I think.
Yeah, I can expand on that because one of the biggest concerns was the police officers didn't know what they were walking into, and this pre-screening process did all of that prior to the officer showing up, so then they could decide, all right, what level of PPE are needed, what level of response is needed, is it someone with a toothache or is it someone in cardiac arrest? All of that was done by phone, pre-screened, pushed out onto the computers. And the communication between the police and fire, it just closed the loop in the circle. So we're keeping everybody safe, and this level of communication with SEMREC and just the amount of staff that we have been able to keep safe and keep on responding for the town has been amazing. Surrounding towns were kind of calling us, hey, how are you doing this? And honestly, I felt like we had like a 2.5 week lead on most agencies. Who were all of a sudden getting hit with a 20% exposure rate, or all of a sudden they're like, how are they going to survive this initial wave? And the pre-planning with SEMREC and Chief Geller, we survived it, and we were able to maintain it.
Yeah, we talk on a daily basis, and we talk to Rob pretty much.
From a safe distance, of course. Just
But I think
you guys are pushing the boundaries.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
5.5.
Well, he took my seat, so
We should have put the microphones 8 feet apart.
But again, talk about construction projects and timing and everything else. I think we were somewhat fortunate that the SEMREC project has continued up at High Rock, and we were able to get some labor in from the city because of the construction projects, and that things have slowed down, so people are looking for work. So I think they're full steam ahead. They really haven't missed a beat. I think that project's going to come in on time, and it's absolutely phenomenal. The building is absolutely perfect. It's impressive. It's like the crown jewel of. I might be biased, but it's like the crown jewel of 911 centers in the state. I don't think anybody has a building like that. And it's classy. It's definitely appropriate. It's going to be state of the art. It's resilient. It's very it's unbelievable. I can't say enough. I can't even gather the words.
And their staff have also working in the public safety building. They're all they're part of our family essentially of keeping safe and making sure that we didn't expose them, because in that small area, if they had an exposure, we were running that scenario, and all of a sudden they could have lost like half their staff, and you can't replace some of them quickly. You can't. They're training and stuff like that. So it's been great. To the initial question, Tom, as we keep going on and on, it's been a godsend in many ways, because we have a department head running a new department, which is the way it should be, and the residents of Foxborough have definitely been the ones who benefited.
Okay, so that wasn't a setup question, okay, Chiefs?
No, we appreciate it.
You weren't on the payroll for that one. I wanted to know that everything that we've been talking about put into place is actually under a crisis situation here that was completely unforeseen, is actually working out to the best expectations. It's good.
With the savings to the taxpayers, substantial savings.
So with that as context, and that's great insight, guys, appreciate it. We know that the original proposal for 2021 for SEMREC, for the SEMREC org was $400,000, down from a $500K number for 2020. The new number is 310, so that's another 90,000 down from the original 400. So is there any other questions or comments around this one line item that's at 310?
Oh.
Seth, just looking at, maybe I have the wrong workbook, but looking at the most recent budget that, remember that actually Bill sent to all of us on Article 4? The previous request was $507,700 K. So it's a bit more, no?
So that was,
It should be 400.
that was the department head request. And then originally, Bill submitted 400,000. If you look all the way to the right. And then most recently, we're looking at 310.
Yes.
Thank you. Correct.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so I move to vote on the department, the Sunmark Department 230, in the amount of 310,000.
Second.
Second? That's Larry. Tom?
Yep.
All those in favor,
Yep, I got
please
you,
raise your
Larry.
hand.
I got you, Larry.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstain. Thanks, everybody. All right. We'll move on to Department 235, the Public Safety Building.
Do you want to stay?
Alrighty. All right, same drill, folks. So this budget proposal is remained consistent from the original proposal that we received early in the year, or in the calendar year, I guess. And the amount is $79,375, which is down from 2020 budget, which the 2020 budget was $110,640. So this, yep. So I'll let you guys find that. All right, so let's just take a look here. The decline is primarily a result of services or some capital items that were taken care of in the 2020 budget.
I think the big one was the duct cleaning.
Duct cleaning was 20, almost 25. So that's 41,000. One-time stuff from
31,000.
2020.
31,000.
Chief, can you refresh my memory? Wasn't there something about cracks in the foundation or the
There was,
driveway?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So did that get pulled out of this year?
got pulled, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Just
Yep.
wanted to know. And was that out of capital outlay? Do you know what line item
That
was?
would be CIP.
Okay. All right. Oh, that was okay. All
That
right.
was a CIP, but it
Okay.
did get pulled, yeah.
Yep, okay, that makes sense. All right, so Chief Kelleher is still here. So if there's any questions here, I'm comfortable with the 79,375. If there's questions, comments, now is the time. The floor is open. This is pretty straightforward.
Pretty much.
So I move to vote on Department 235, Public Safety Building, in the amount of $79,375.
Second.
That's Bernard.
Bernard.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Tom makes 10. 10 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstain. And I thank you for
Pretty confident
that.
like that.
Thank you again.
All right, Chief, thank you. All right. So last department is inspections. Number 241. All right. So, again, Department 241, the proposal, thanks a lot, Chief. Proposal is $423,487.44, which is consistent with the original proposal from back earlier in Jan-Feb timeframe. So no change there, and it's a decline, or it's a change from 2020 budget to 2021 proposal. This would represent a decline of, or a change of negative 2.58%. Right?
Hey, Seth, I have a
Yes.
question.
Larry, go ahead.
Is George still?
George is here.
Hey, George, I have a question. Since I know we're still looking to hire Nick's replacement,
Yes.
are we adjusting the budget for a lower wage, or we're keeping it?
I'm not sure what's been offered. I know that that I think that they may have somebody at the moment, but I don't know what the offering is. And you could be correct. It could be adjusted to whatever this person is in the negotiation. I just don't know what that number is at the moment. But that might account for some of the downward, in the budget.
No, but I believe the budget that we're looking at right now was given to us when Nick was still
Yes.
working for the town.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I didn't know the bill came back and hit it again just after this mess took place, so.
So my hope or expectation, Larry, is that they would have a little bit of flexibility, but they would hire at the appropriate rate commensurate with the experience of the candidate.
I'll only say this, and this is speaking from a different job. It's very, very hard.
Yeah.
To get a building inspector. I mean, that's qualified. There's plenty of younger guys, but to have anybody with experience, that's a hard one. It really is.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I ask, with any potential delays on construction eking into the next fiscal year, has there been any kind of calculus to adjust for expected inspections? Or
from what I understood prior to this, one of the issues was that there was going to be a pretty big building uptick.
Yeah.
I can only tell you this, from what I'm seeing right now in this year, we've pulled in that area, the building inspections, some fairly large numbers over the period of time that everything's been dead. Right. And I mean, I can think of almost 120,000 that just came in within the last month in gas, plumbing, and building inspections.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I mean, I can't tell you that there won't be a downtick, but it sure isn't showing right at least as the money that's coming through the door.
Yeah. And I'd also,
I wasn't actually talking about revenues. I was talking about expenditures of the time and manpower needed to do inspections. Like, is there an expected backlog that's going to all of a sudden require a lot of time going out and catching up, or is there going to be a potential drag on if a lot of this stuff was already taken care of now, that when things start going forward with construction again, is it all been taken care of, or is there, a need for retrospect that you might see a drop off.
Well, I wish I could say for sure on that, but the problem you've got is that in a lot of the inspectional areas, you have a situation where if it's something we have to go in, they can't go into the place if there's people in there, okay? So it's kind of putting a damper on it. I think prior to the, prior to this COVID thing, there was from both, I think it was the Board of Health and the inspections area, they were looking to try to get some extra people on just to deal with things, and that didn't include the COVID stuff. They were looking at a big year. And of course, all of that kind of went out the window over the last month. But I guess that's something that would probably have to look at again as we go along to see, you know, is there going to be a building boom? Is there not going to be? Are we going to get this? Are we not going to get that? It's. I wish I could tell you that I knew for sure, but it's. I'm guessing as much as you are at this point.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd say that, you know, a lot of our cost in this area is fixed as opposed to variable, so, and we wouldn't plan to have a lot more variable in there. So if there's backlog, that will just require some patience, potentially.
All right.
Sorry, I misunderstood the question.
No, it was good insight. Either the revenue side was good to understand too, so appreciate it, George. All right, inspections, questions, comments? Anything further?
If it's fixed, I'm fine.
All right, I make a motion to vote on Department 241 inspections in the amount of $423,487.44.
Second.
Dennis seconds. That was Dennis.
Who was that, Jack?
All those in favor, please raise your hands. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Who seconded that?
That was Dennis, Tom.
Dennis, okay, thank you.
And we have a vote of 10 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstain. Thanks, everybody. Okay. So that concludes our agenda items. So actually quickly, in terms of assignments, it feels like everyone's fine with their article assignments, and we can move forward with the list of assigned articles as is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if there's any last
Yes.
second
Yep.
changes, let me know. George, while we have you here, so appreciate the information that you sent earlier. So you guys, the committee members will receive information from me. And it is in regards to the revenue budget. So we had last week, we had the conversation around the revenue budget where George and Bill and we had that conversation about where various revenue line items are going to come in. So George provided some additional information, in particular around local receipts. I had some trending from a prior meeting around local receipts. With some detail, George built out a forecast for 2020. So where may this year come in for local receipts based on insights and what we've collected already. And then, so that enabled us to have a trend or look at a trend from 2014 all the way through to the 2021 projection, the 2021 request for budget for local receipts specifically. And that number for 2021 is 10.75. And so if you have the documentation from last week, you should recognize that number. And so, George, I think one of the things that I'll reach out to you and Bill about, and just to give you a heads up, the 10.75
Yeah.
is a number that we're gonna have to have some more conversations around the local receipts. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a heads up in the spirit of openness and transparency. That's something that we're going to have a discussion about, I think, in probably relatively quickly. So,
In regards to which,
in regards to, so just based on initial reaction is that the 10.75 feels like it's aggressive.
too much?
Too much.
I tend to disagree.
No?
Because I think, and I don't know whether you want to have the conversation now, but
Yeah.
I think what everybody is missing here, and you're looking at components of a larger picture. When you do your budget at the end of the year, everything flows into an account called the Excess and Deficiency Fund, or Unreserved Fund Balance, which is actually the place you get your free cash from. Free cash is actually a subcomponent of the unreserved fund balance. It's nothing more than the state coming in and saying, okay, I'm making up a number. You've got $10 million in here. We're taking out this, and this, so that you don't accidentally go over. And we're saying you got $5 million worth of free cash, okay? But what makes up that number is a multitude of, well, not a multitude, but a number of different things, all of which are all over the place. One, how much money are we going to turn back from the existing budget that we didn't spend this year? How much money did we predict was coming in, not only on the local receipts, but we were set to take in X on personal real estate, et cetera, okay? All those things, we might be higher on the real estate, might be a little lower here, we might be putting back money here. All that is going to close and fold up into the unreserved fund balance, and then the state will do its gyration one more time. Okay. So what has happened is that when Bill and I sat down, and Marie, we made some predictions, like state aid was going to come in 10% less than what it is. Is that going to necessarily happen? No, we're trying to use the best figures that we can possibly use. In the end, there's going to be, we're going to have to look at this stuff as we move forward. 3 months into next year, 6 months into next year. We have backfilled with monies like free cash and put that in there. Now, if for some reason the state aid comes in higher than what we predicted, okay, all that's going to do is fill back your free cash. If indeed there's going to be a huge downtick, okay, could possibly happen, we don't know. But the problem is this. When you listen to people from outside, in one respect, we'll have somebody from the stadium say, we're going to have a banner year next year. In another, oh, they're not going to open any kind of things for another year and a half, okay? The state, oh, be very conservative on what you're doing with the thing. I'd cut 10%, I'd cut 20%, I'd come in level, okay? You're not going to know any of this for another 6 months.
Right.
And if that's the case, then we'll have to adjust sometime in the fall to make this work. But what we're doing is spinning our wheels. We've come in with a very conservative budget right now, meaning we had the ability to backfill, okay, a lot of things because we're the town of Foxborough and we're not the town of some of the ones that I've been in before.
Sure.
Okay. So what I think I'm trying to say is maybe those local receipts are a little bit too high, or maybe we're gonna get a windfall in there, but we don't know, all right? So the only thing you can do in a case like this is add more free cash to backfill and say, well, I wanna take another $500,000 out of there, and then fill it to keep the budget as is, or wait and see how it plays out. I submit this, and this sounds very careless on my part, but for a change, I actually landed on the right spot, okay? In my old stomping grounds, not just necessarily the town that I was working for, but some of the surrounding towns that I know, they're not set up the way Foxborough is. They don't have the ability to fix a budget the way we have. And we'll go back to that statement that was made in the prospectus there from Standard & Poor's. Foxborough is positioned better to weather these shifts from the state and federal government than the federal government is, okay? So having said that, if indeed we're wrong and maybe the state comes in with a 30% cut for next year, 20 or 21, and that's not necessarily on local receipts, I'm talking state.
Yep.
What you're gonna see is a devastation across the board way beyond anything that you've ever seen. And I think that's what's going to end up happening is the state can't do that. Because these cities and towns, not necessarily Foxborough, will be wiped, okay? Because they don't have any other place to go, and you're talking massive, massive layoffs everywhere. Given a situation like that, I've always, and I think Bill kind of agrees with me, when you're faced with a situation like that, if it was just us, answer is, you're on your own, get your act together. When you're faced with an across-the-board devastation, like could potentially happen, then you sit back and you wait for the cavalry to come, because something will have to happen, whether the state floats some type of a bond issuance to get the money and keep everything afloat, or what. But the situation we're in is that we've already come in with a relatively conservative on all of our numbers, and some of those might be way better than what we figured. But if it doesn't start showing on there and everybody's in that situation, we're still going to be able to fix and make some moves 3, 4, September, October, whatever, right up until we go to set the tax rate. We can come back and make moves to correct the situation. And I truly believe that it ain't gonna be only us. I think you're gonna see just about every other town out there except the richest ones that are going, the most well-heeled.
Yep. Right.
And that's what they're gonna do.
Right. So I agree that there's the ability to adjust in the fall, and that, just to make it clear, that can work both ways. So there may be value in having a more realistic, or we'll have the conversation, a more realistic revenue plan for 2021, and then if things turn out a lot better than some of us on the committee think they will, we can always revisit. So appreciate all the commentary and the feedback, George. And right now, I've had conversations with Larry. I'm introducing this to the committee, to you, and to you, pretty much for the first time right now. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on it right now. I would suggest that before there's any kind of panicky feelings, if the CIP budget request is 10.75, we're not probably suggesting that comes down $1 million or anything, but $500,000, maybe in the ballpark of what we might think is more realistic. And so that's very, very early stages, but again, in the spirit of transparency, I wanted to introduce that topic. And I expect that we'll be having that conversation soon at this committee, and also if we have sort of outside offline conversations, that's just setting the stage for that. So is there any questions on that from the committee as far as where we're headed with that, or thoughts? Okay.
Well, I mean, it seems reasonable. I mean, people are going to expect it, right? That was one of my concerns. Like, even reviewing some of the budgets tonight, like with water. I mean, the optics on $9.4 million of spend. Like right now, I think people are going to have a hard time with it, right?
Yeah.
I think on the committee here, we all know it's necessary, and we've all seen their 20-year plan. But at the end of the day, I just have a hard time seeing them voting it affirmative.
The other thing about the warrant, though, is that since they're since they can actually do it anyways. They can vote on themselves as long as they can justify it with rates over that 20-year period. It's almost a courtesy for them to put it on our agenda.
Sorry, Tom. I don't follow that point.
I thought that as a water and sewer that their board are able to vote for their bond issues and.
No, the bond issuance is done through the treasurer collector of the town, okay? They don't float their own bond. What I think is that they are a self-sufficient fund, and they vote their own rates. So you're partially right, Tom. You're there to the point, and I think if Chris was still on the line, what he was trying to allude to is they have had multiple studies done where they hire somebody. This is done in most water and sewer departments, okay? And what they have done is worked in these projects as part of their rate increases for the last number of years.
Right.
And I think, and if I'm not mistaken, I hope I'm not going to something, I think he just alluded about an hour ago that his rates are on track with the things that that you guys are doing. So the other stuff is basically, and I think I can't remember who just said this because I have a problem with this. Who's talking on the thing? But somebody just said I don't think that the town will vote for it. But I look at it from a standpoint of we're not. That is the final solution is going to be on the town to say this is what we're going to do, and it always is.
Right.
What we're doing is saying, should it go forward and go on there for them to vote on, and for the reasons that we spoke about, cheap interest and what have you, and the necessity to do these things. It was put on. Now the town can come back and say, no, we don't want that. And I think that's not what we don't want to do that. But it's been put there for people to at least take the shot with if they want and determine with the proper information.
Right. So bottom line is, yes, the town decides on any bond issue, water department or other. Right. And I agree with Brian that will be challenged at town meeting, depending on how we vote. The challenge may be more or less strenuous. I have a sense of how I think we'll vote on that, but that remains to be seen. We'll have that conversation in a week or so.
And I'm sorry to confuse that issue then. I was thinking about rates. They can control the rates, and that's not a votable issue. It's the
you were partially right. You were partially right. I just think that when it does come down to the bond issuance, you always see it's to authorize the treasurer to enter into a bond issuance
on behalf of that committee. Yeah, right.
Right.
I put too much weight on the other part. That's all.
Yep.
Sorry,
enough, Tom. Any other questions, comments before I think we're about ready to adjourn, or anything anyone has to offer? Yeah.
Can we talk about that email you forwarded about the from Sue about the steelworkers contract?
Yeah, certainly. So did everyone receive an email from me pretty late in the day that I forwarded from Sue Dring, our former chairman? Yeah. Did people have a chance to look through that?
Yep.
Any?
Seth, I just don't understand, like, contractually what, I mean, I understand what she's arguing for, and it makes sense.
Okay.
But I mean, are we locked in on those contracts for some period of time?
As we've seen in previous sessions, there are contracts that are, so there are salaries and wages that we're contractually obligated to pay. So that's one piece of the process. As far as what we do as the advisory committee, we make recommendations around articles, including the budget, which includes those compensation budget line items. So what we've really done in the past is have that be a separate process or pieces of the process where we can vote and recommend whatever budget we think is appropriate for the town. The town ultimately decides whether they want to fund those line items that cover those contractually obligated payment, wages, salaries and wages. George, go ahead.
Without cutting you off, you're right on the, I think a couple of minutes ago, the chiefs were talking about, we had this big line, this big lump of money came in. So what you guys have been doing, okay, is they may have been negotiating, I'm not sure because I haven't been here for the whole, I've only been here for 9 months, but right. What would have happened is they might have been negotiating a contract with Department X or this union, okay? And then to do that, they came up with a number of $150,000 or something like that, which would have been the difference as a result of the new contract. Then you went to that town meeting and they just took the 150 and dropped it in a big line at the top of the budget. Theoretically done properly, it should have been, factored out so it's going into all the lines so you can say, okay, this is how much for overtime now, this is how much. But they just took a big lump sum. But I guess the bottom line point is, what you were doing is, we need X, we want to transfer it from here, 150, 200, whatever it is, and we want to put it into this budget for this new negotiation, so the town is actually voting it to do that.
Right.
If I can tell you what my reading of Sue's email is, she had identified the fact that one of the contracts ends on June of this next month.
Okay.
And one might, in the 2021 budget that we're preparing for town meeting, one might have said, all right, all of the compensation line items will be level funded until a contract is signed. Now, we didn't do that. The budget submitted to us apparently have, if I understand Sue correctly, approximately 4%. Now, she identified one or two individuals. We're not going to change one or two individuals. You either do all or none. Right. And I don't think at this point her suggestion is practical. So whether it's correct or not, it's not practical.
Thanks for that, Jack. So I would suggest that if the idea was, or the thought was, we change the budget, or we recommend a different budget that funds those contracts, that would be us. If it's a question of contracts and rates that are negotiated, that would actually be a conversation to have with the Board of Selectmen. So,
but there's one other thing too.
Look at this historically. In the past, we have level funded, and then in a separate warrant article later on, funded the increase for a contract.
That's exactly what I was saying, Jack, is that's where that big lump sum gets dropped in, but you're going to a town meeting to do that. Now, in the case of somebody, let's say, I don't have this letter, I don't know what it's saying, but if it was an individual contract, let's say Joe Blow puts in for 2%, thinking that they, to cover or compensate for 2%. If whoever is in charge of putting that 2% out doesn't give it to them, just because it's in there, you can't spend it. You know what I'm saying? It's there, but it's going to close out at the end of the year. You don't get it because it's in the.
I don't think we can do anything with this at this point. Right. She identified specific individuals, and we're not going to cut 2% or 4% from those in those line items. You either do all or none, right. And that means going back through the budgeting process and asking for it to be level funded, which is not going to happen at this point.
All right. I think we've covered that.
Yes.
Bill Keegan, town manager, has joined the meeting. So welcome, Bill.
Sorry it took so long, but I didn't realize that you were going to get into this kind of discussion tonight. But having heard, I'm not aware of the letter that she sent you, but I will say to you that anybody who has a contract that is funded through this next fiscal year, even if the contract and the steelworkers and the firefighters and the police officers, the ones that do not have contracts going into next year. However, if they do have step increases, those step increases will continue on in the existing contracts. They do not get a cost of living adjustment because the contracts end on June 30th of this current year. So any suggestion that they're going to get a 4% raise is simply wrong. So I just clarify that for everybody that if you are entitled to a step, that's
you're kind of cutting out, Bill. You're kind of cutting out. Talk to the mic.
Sorry about that. So
yeah, that's okay.
There is an existing contract, which even if it expires on June, it doesn't mean that the contract is not in effect. It means that they do not get anything more than what is already in the existing contract. And if there is step increases allotted for the contracts, which there are I know the steelworkers and in some cases the police officers, because a lot of them are young, but those people still get their step increases, even if there's not a new contract for the next fiscal year. The only thing that doesn't get paid is a cost of living adjustment until that gets negotiated.
Fair right? point, and I think that's understood.
Any budget that you currently have was included the step increases if they were due under the contract.
Fair point. Thank you, Bill.
Bill, this is Dennis. Wouldn't you still have to make an accommodation in the budget for the step increase that's going to be negotiated?
Yes, and so anybody who has a step increase coming to them, we've included that in the budget. And so let's not forget here that the town budget is only up 1.2 or 3%. I mean, if you compare that to the school side, which is up 3-something%, I mean, we came in at a very low number to begin with. And I think that has to be stated for the record, because clearly we're not trying to exert or overexert the numbers in the budget with step increases that go beyond what is already stated and already agreed to with the town. So, got it. But the simple answer to your question, Dennis, is yes, it's already been included in the budget as it is.
Hey, Seth, can I go back to your point? I think your original point is valid, which Sue's email was complaining about what she saw as a bigger issue, but I don't know that this group can do anything about that issue.
Yeah, I think the correct forum is the Board of Selectmen, frankly. So.
Yep.
All right.
One more thing before we adjourn.
Sure, Dan, go ahead.
I got an email from Chris Gallagher right now saying the water board has already voted the 6% rate increase. Yes. That includes the 9.4 million bond item. Just for everybody's clarity.
Everyone follow on that point?
Meaning they've adjusted their rates to cover that, but now you have to go out and actually do the bond issuance.
Right. 6% includes the financing and everything associated with the 9.4 million. Got it.
I
Hey,
have
Seth?
one additional item.
Oh, sorry.
I had a question last week as to the fact that we reviewed half of the budget and left the school department without being examined as to the effects of the COVID-19. And Seth did indeed go back and talked to Bill Yuckner, who sent an email back. It's not appropriate, or it's not useful, I think, for individuals to go back and talk to him. The question was, should the committee review the budget? And the answer might be no.
Well, we addressed that, Jack. We did address that. We brought that before the committee, and we understood that we voted, and we agreed that we were going to let that vote stand without revisiting. I didn't feel the need to vote on that per se. We got agreement, and I think the feedback we got from Bill Yuckner validates the assertion that in the whatever the new normal shakes out to be, costs will likely be higher than any changes that are going to drive cost savings. So if the school committee and school administration is still comfortable with the budget that they put forward, most of the increases being driven by municipal, local, state mandates, it seemed that this committee was also comfortable with that. I don't see a lot of value in having school administration come back in to discuss something we've already voted and agreed on.
Can he hear you?
I hope so.
Can you hear him, Jack?
No. The question I had was, is it worth looking at the other half of the budget? And Seth came back and said, look, I will talk to Bill. And you came back and Bill's answer is no. And that's okay. But I think that's for the committee to be comfortable with the idea that it has reviewed part of the budget and not the other half.
I don't understand the part of the halves. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
We did not relook. We did not re-examine the school part. It's difficult now, for example, maybe impossible legally now, to raise the school budget. It might well have been several weeks ago that we could have change the budget either direction. Now the only direction I think you can go is down. Our recommendation, if we were to make a change, and I'm not sure that we...
Who would recommend that we would take the budget down?
Nobody did. I'm just saying we reviewed half of the budget, namely the town side, and that side, in cooperation with working with the town manager and others, that portion of the budget went down. And in making that review, we did not make the same review of the school budget. That's all that was my point.
Okay.
And we don't have to do that, but I'm just saying, because of the COVID-19 changes in the revenue, we did look at half of the budget, and only half.
Okay, I disagree with that contention. I think we thoroughly reviewed the school budget, but I'll put it out to the committee to comment if there's other thoughts.
Well, first of all, it's 45% of the budget, Jack, in case you were wondering.
What?
He said it's an insignificant piece of the budget, so don't worry about it.
It's only 45%, Jack, not half, so don't worry about it.
Any other serious comments?
I just think that the town does look at us for diligence, and unforeseen, extraordinary times require sometimes extraordinary means to be specific and be diligent. And I can just see that this may be something that ends up leading to a nice 5-hour town meeting. I just on one item, just because we did not give it a second look when we've given everything else pretty much a second look, or at least consider it with questions with other departments as they've come back. Because of the timetable, it has happened that we got the school budget the day before the state started shutting down. I mean,
So if
by the calendar, they end up being that time. I just don't understand why we wouldn't.
May I comment?
If the health departments all of a sudden said we need more stuff because of what's been going on, we would certainly look at that based upon the situation that's at hand. That it's a health emergency.
Fair point, Tom.
I don't
Sharon.
understand why, and that could affect the rest of the budget. I think that that's what we're called upon to do, is to look at this whenever something is going to happen, whether it happens in October, if it happens in April. It's just we have to be able to react to that.
Right, Sharon.
May I comment? First of all, I think as our committee has been very diligent in looking at the school committee's budget, and I feel that if we were to revisit, and I don't know with what purpose, do we want to bring the budget down? Do we want to bring it up? But in any case, when Bill replied in an email, he stated factually the possibilities, to the best of his knowledge, because none of us have answers as to what's going to happen from here on in. So you can only make your best guesstimate. And I totally agreed with what his email stated. And I think that the diligent part for us was that we went to him and asked. And so therefore I feel that it was, I think we did our due diligence, and I think we got the answer, the answer that should satisfy the question.
Mr. Chairman, if I could say something here, if you wouldn't mind.
Please.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Bill.
So I think the point that was just made is actually pretty well taken. And in all due respect to Jack, and I think Jack is trying to do what he thinks is the right thing to look at the whole picture. But just for the edification of the board, we have looked at all of the things collectively, and the cuts that I recommended to you a week ago rather, were cuts that I thought were sustainable given the current circumstances. Now, it's entirely possible that our estimates are off, or our estimates could be too high or too low. We don't know at this point. And I think any further steps that we take at this point are only going to be a guess, because first of all, I don't even know if we'll even have state aid in place, state aid estimate in place by the time we vote on the town's budget. I think so. Therefore, even the action that we take on the budget that we're presenting right now may have to go back to be reviewed further in the fall anyway. So, and I'm also hearing too that there may be reductions in the southeastern regional school budget at this point. There was also I'm hearing possibilities that we may see cost reductions in other areas that are being discussed now, that are fixed cost issues that we can actually look to reduce as well. So the short answer to that, and I certainly respect Jack's thoughts here, but I think what I'm trying to say to you is that the review that we've taken have been all pretty comprehensive, and even the fact that I'm not 100% fully behind every single number we have right now, because the reality is that we don't know. And I think that we're trying to do the best thing based on what we do know and what we think we can do and reasonably take at this point in terms of actions. Even the reductions on the local receipts. I mean, George and I have debated that several times, going back and forth, and there's different schools of thought. We can go back and forth a lot even further. But I think the point I'm trying to make to you is that we're making a guess based upon what we know at this time. And I've talked to my colleagues around the state, and everybody's looking at us saying, wow, how do you guys making cuts, the way you are and still being okay? It's because we planned for this. We have financial reserves in place that most people don't have. So we're in a far better position to make informed decisions than other people are at this point in time. So I think, the budget we presented right now has been well thought through, well considered. And even though we don't have all the answers, I think we've given you a recommendation which I think is very defensible at this point in time.
So I think to just put the last point on that, Jack, if town management and school administration and school committee what they've asked for is what we reviewed. If there was something there that changed one way or another, I think it would be the right thing to have them come back, but we reviewed exactly what has been proposed to us. It hasn't changed. And so I'm comfortable with saying that we have actually reviewed not half or pieces of the budget, but I think we've done the thorough review and done our due diligence there in a complete way. So I'm going to let that stand.
And just one final word on that, Seth. Is that even with that being said, we know that further changes are going to be made even after June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom line is that we're going to have to go back in the fall and make further adjustments based upon not just our decisions, but what the state has done and what other entities have done that we pay into. So that's my final thought is just that even what we're going to approve will ultimately have to be changed later on in a different meeting.
So it's going to be a busy fall.
You're saying
to look forward to. Yeah. Paul, go ahead.
that was so. Bill, you're saying you're pretty sure at this point, given all the uncertainty, there'll be a fall town meeting?
Yeah, we usually do a second one anyways.
Okay.
And in this case, it's going to be absolutely necessary because everyone that I'm talking to is all saying, look, we're going to do the best we can at the annual and then follow up again in the fall when we have better understanding of what the state figure is going to be and what kind of considerations they're going to give to us. So it's entirely possible that hey, maybe I was a little bit short on from anyone's perspective in terms of local revenue estimates, but we may be high on the state side. So in terms of our estimate there, so it may balance out either way in terms of the overall cut that we've made. It may, and if George and we talked about this today again. So hey, if it's much worse than what was all saying, we're all going to be in a difficult position to deal with that. But we'll have to figure it out when we get there. But right now, we're figuring out something we don't know what the extent of the problem is.
I think the combinations and permutations on this thing that you could try to do, I mean, you'll consider suicide by if you try to meld them together and, well, what if this is up, this is down, what if this isn't up and this is up, and I mean, you go out of your mind trying to do it. It's just beyond making a prediction.
We don't want anyone to go out of their mind, so we'll continue the conversation, but I think at this point we've achieved everything that we wanted to for tonight, so I think maybe we
Motion to adjourn.
Hey, Seth, wait 1 second, Ben.
Nope. Retracted.
Brian.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Brian.
Really quick, I just needed to ask Bill one thing.
Sure.
Have we looked at the quorum situation? Can that be changed for this upcoming town meeting?
It's a good question, Brian. So what has happened is the state legislature has been considering a possible change in that. But here's the challenge with that, is that we have a minimum quorum requirement of 100 people. And what would come out of that was that we have the legislature has considering possibly lowering that. But then the question is, okay, which 100 do you let in the room, or which 50 do you let in the room? Which, once you get to the meeting, who are you going to turn people away once they get there? What if more people show up? Then it gets to a pretty difficult discussion at that point. So even if they do technically reduce the quorum, all that means is that you may be in a position where you have to make some difficult choices, and I don't know who's going to make those choices. That's the challenge.
I think it's going to be interesting because to me it's entirely possible for us to not get 100 for this town meeting.
Yeah, people be afraid of something to come. Yeah.
So have it out in the football field.
We're actually.
I was thinking the same thing, Brian. It's a great idea. Do it outside.
We are looking at those possibilities.
Ahern Field.
We're looking at possibilities.
Yeah.
We hold it right now. So
5 to 6 foot boxes that everyone stands in.
there you go.
Good stuff.
There you go. All right.
About doing
They
it
do that.
again.
They do that for cow bingo too, don't they?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Dan's done
Right.
motioning, so we need another motion.
Adjourn.
I motion to adjourn. Thanks, Bill. Somebody second?
Second.
Brian seconds. All those in favor? Please raise your hand high. That's everybody. That's
I'll
10.
throw in if they.
Oh, there we go. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. And have a great
everybody.
week and weekend. We'll talk soon.